The summer sky was white and endless, a pale blue stretching across the high desert like a painted canvas left out to fade in the sun. The land rolled gently with hills of dusty red earth and stubborn grass that clung to the ground with quiet resilience. The river cut through it all, slow, steady, reflecting sunlight like a strip of polished silver. There was no sound but wind, water, and the distant call of a hawk. Yet the air was thick, heavier than heat alone could explain. It was the quiet of held breath, of something sacred and painful unfolding. Naya lay on the woven reed blanket her mother had made when she was still a child small enough to be carried. The edges of it were frayed now, threads loosening with age, time, and countless washings in the river. Her body, once strong as braided rawhide, now felt light and thin, like a branch that had dried beneath too many suns. She could feel the weight of her limbs, but not their strength. Her legs no longer listened to her mind. They simply lay still, like they belonged to someone else. She remembered the wind in her hair. She remembered the earth racing beneath her feet. She had once run faster than any girl in her tribe, faster than some of the boys. Her father used to stand at the edge of the canyon, hand raised, calling her, Eagle's Shadow, because he swore her feet barely touched the ground. Running had been her prayer, her joy, her freedom. She would run until her lungs burned and her skin glowed with the warmth of the sun, until everything else, every worry, every boundary, fell away. Now she could not even take a single step. Her mother knelt beside her, smoothing her long black hair, weaving it gently behind her ear. Her mother's hands were different now too, more delicate, more fragile than Naya remembered. Grief had a way of aging people without asking their permission. Tears shimmered in her mother's eyes, but she did not let them fall. Not yet, not while others were watching. Men and women of the band stood in a half-circle, some with bowed heads, others with unreadable expressions. The medicine woman stood near the riverbank, her face calm but grave. She was older than the hills, it seemed, her braids wrapped with red cloth, her eyes knowing more than anyone could see. She had spoken to Naya earlier, softly, as if comforting a child waking from nightmares. Your spirit is strong, she had said. But your spirit is trapped inside a body that cannot follow where it leads. The sky calls to you. The river sends its song. There had been no judgment in her voice. Only a sorrow so deep it echoed like canyon stone. Naya tried to speak then, tried to tell her that she was not trapped, that she did not want to leave, that her spirit was still hers and still here. But her voice had come out thin and quiet, as if there were ocean sand caught in her throat. Her mother had heard her, her father had heard her, but words had not changed the weight of tradition, or fear, or belief. The tribe believed every life moved like a circle, that every spirit had its rightful journey. They believed a person must live in balance, with land, sky, body, and self. To live unable to walk, unable to contribute, was not merely a hardship, it was a fracture in that balance. A spirit suspended, neither grounded nor free. And to remain in such a state was considered suffering greater than the pain of letting go. But belief and love often stand at war with one another. Her father paced behind the others like a caged wolf, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles had turned pale. He had said nothing since morning. He had not looked at his daughter once, not because he felt nothing, but because he felt too much. If he looked, he feared he would fall apart in front of everyone. And a father was not allowed to fall apart. The air shifted. The moment had arrived. Two men stepped forward to lift the blanket. Her mother placed her hand over her heart, pressing hard, as if holding something inside that threatened to burst out. Naya felt her breath tremble. The river shimmered, close now, close enough that she could smell the mineral tang rising from it, cool against the heat of the day. She wanted to speak, to scream, to say she was alive. But her voice stayed trapped inside her chest. The men lifted her carefully, with reverence instead of haste. The people of her tribe did not act out of cruelty. They acted out of belief, of sorrow, of the heavy weight of tradition. But intention does not lessen the pain of being carried towards something final. Her body tilted slightly as they approached the river's edge. Water lapped quietly over stone, whispering a welcome, or perhaps a farewell. Her mother fell to her knees, finally unable to hold back the sob that tore out of her like a storm breaking through clouds. That sound traveled across the valley. It carried on the wind. It reached the ears of a traveler who had been riding alone along the upper ridge, his horse stepping carefully through brush and stone. Lucas Hale pulled his reins gently, stopping to listen. It was a sound he recognized, a sound of someone losing everything. He moved his horse forward, scanning the riverbank below, trying to understand. From the ridge he could see the figures, the blanket, the girl. He could not hear the soft words, the prayers spoken under breath, the stories of spirit and sky, but he understood what was happening. A human being, still alive, was being given to the river. Something in his chest seized tight. His own past came roaring back like wildfire wind. He had lost someone once. Not to tradition, not to ceremony, but to water. He had stood helpless that day, shouting, reaching, but too late. Too far, too slow, not again. He did not think. There was no time for thought. He kicked his horse hard and rode down the slope, dirt spraying behind him. Voices rose in surprise, in alarm, as the stranger burst into their sorrow. He did not stop. He did not ask. He reached the bank just as the blanket lowered into the water. And then he jumped. The river exploded around him, cold and deep and alive. His arms wrapped around Naya's body, lifting her head above the surface, pulling her close to his chest. She felt weightless in his grip, like air itself had gathered into his hands. Her eyes opened, locking onto his. There was fear in them, yes. And exhaustion, and something like relief. He held her tighter. "I've got you," he whispered, voice raw. The river kept flowing. The tribe stood frozen. The world held still. And fate shifted, just enough to change everything. Voices collided like storm winds when Lucas carried Naya out of the river. Some of the people cried out in shock, others stepped back, as if unsure whether they had just witnessed a miracle or an act against forces older than memory. Water dripped from his hair and clothes, trailing down his arms and falling from Naya's fingertips like silver droplets returning to the earth. He stood trembling, not from fear, but from the intensity of what he had just done. His breath came in rough bursts, but his grip on her was steady and sure. Her father was the first to break from the spell of stunned silence. He waded into the river, the water rising around his knees, his steps heavy as stone. He reached them and placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Lucas did not pull away. He did not claim her. He simply held her, waiting. The father looked at Lucas not with anger, but with a sorrow so deep it could hollow a person from within. "This was not your choice," he whispered, voice trembling like an arrow about to snap. Lucas swallowed hard. Maybe not, but she was breathing, and she wanted to live. His words were quiet, but the conviction inside them was strong enough to carry. Some of the tribe members murmured in agreement, others in confusion. Tradition had been set in motion, but tradition was not a wall, it was a road. And roads could change direction when hearts changed with them. The medicine woman stepped forward, her staff tapping once against the riverbank. The sound was small, but it drew every gaze. She studied Naya's face, then her father's, then Lucas's wet, dirt-streaked face. Her eyes were old with memory, young with compassion. "The river has spoken," she said. "Not an ending, not a fate, a shift. She remains. Her breath stays. Her spirit is still bound to her bones. The sky has not claimed her. It is not her time to walk the wind." A wave of relief broke through the gathered crowd, quiet at first, then rippling outward as people finally allowed themselves to breathe. Naya's mother rushed forward and wrapped her in trembling arms, the kind of embrace that tries to hold a life in place, afraid it might vanish if not held tightly enough. Lucas slowly released her to her mother's hold. He stood back, chest heaving, unsure what came next, unsure whether he had just interfered in something sacred, unsure whether he would be allowed to remain or whether he would be asked to leave immediately and never return. But no one spoke of banishment. They did not thank him, but they did not reject him. Their silence was not cold, it was reverent, processing the weight of what had happened. Tradition had cracked, but not broken. And sometimes, a crack is simply where the light enters. The tribe carried Naya back to camp, not on the burial blanket, but on one of healing. A softer one, woven with care, stitched with symbols meant for protection and guidance. Her mother walked beside her, her hand never leaving her daughter's shoulder. Lucas followed at a respectful distance, unsure whether he was welcome but unwilling to turn away. Over the next days, he stayed near the river, letting his horse graze, sleeping beneath the cottonwoods. He did not approach their camp unless someone called for him. He gave the family space to grieve, to mend, to breathe. But he remained near, like a quiet promise that did not require words. And the tribe watched him, not suspiciously, but thoughtfully. There was something in the way he tended his horse, in the way he sat by the water in silence, that spoke of a man who carried his own wounds inside him. On the fourth morning, Naya's mother approached him. She brought a small clay bowl filled with herbs crushed into paste and gestured for him to follow her. He rose without speaking. Her steps were slow but sure, guiding him into the lodge where Naya now rested. The interior was dim, the air filled with the calming scent of burning sage and river mint. Naya lay on a layer of soft hides, her eyes closed, her breathing steady but shallow. She did not look like someone who had been at the edge of death. She looked like someone suspended between worlds, deciding which one to return to. The medicine woman sat beside her, grinding more herbs. She nodded once to Lucas. "You will help," she said. He knelt without hesitation. Days turned into a rhythm. Lucas learned to support Naya's back when she sat upright. He learned how to guide her hands through simple motions to rebuild strength. He learned to feed her slowly, offering water infused with healing roots. He did all of it silently, respectfully, following the guidance of her mother and the medicine woman. Naya watched him with quiet eyes. She recognized something in him, a weight much like her own. Someone who had also lost pieces of life he could not retrieve. One afternoon, while Lucas supported her as she sat near the river, she spoke for the first time directly to him. "Why?" she asked, her voice fragile but clear. Lucas looked out at the water, searching for words he hadn't spoken in years. "Someone I loved drowned," he said. "I couldn't reach them in time. I watched them go. I couldn't watch that happen again. Not if I could stop it." She studied his face, seeing the scar of old pain beneath his steady expression. "I thought my life was over," she whispered. "I thought the river was the last place I would see." Lucas shook his head. "Sometimes life begins again in the places we think it ends." She let those words settle. The sun warmed her face. The breeze lifted her hair. For the first time in many seasons, she felt something stirring inside her, a faint ember of will. Each day after that, she tried a little more. It began with her arms, lifting, reaching, holding. Her fingers regained strength, her grip grew steadier. She learned to breathe deeply again, to sit taller, to focus her thoughts. Lucas never pushed her. He simply stayed beside her, steady as the river stones. There were setbacks, days when pain struck so sharply she could barely breathe, days when frustration made her want to weep. On those days, Lucas sat beside her and let silence be their shared language. She did not need comfort spoken aloud, she needed the world to not abandon her. And he didn't. Then, slowly, her legs began to wake. A twitch, a tremor, a flicker of sensation like a spark traveling through darkness. The first time she moved her foot even the smallest amount, tears spilled down her cheeks. Her mother cried openly. Lucas bowed his head, shoulders trembling with quiet relief. The tribe gathered not to witness her suffering now, but to witness her return. She practiced every sunrise, her hands pressed against Lucas's arms, her feet planted on the earth, her breath steady and strong. The first time she stood, even for only a heartbeat, the world seemed to hold still around her. The wind paused, the river hushed, her mother let out a cry that was half laugh, half prayer. Naya stood, not as the girl she had been, but as the woman she was becoming. A woman who had been to the edge of death and chose not to leave. A woman who had learned to live again, not by returning to who she was, but by embracing who she could be now. The sky did not claim her. The earth welcomed her back. And Lucas, who had once been drifting like a man without a home, found himself rooted, not by obligation, but by quiet devotion. They were not the same souls they had been before the river. They had been remade, together.